Good afternoon, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. This is Mark Levine right here on We Act Radio, AM 1480. You can hear the Inside Scoop every Sunday from 1 to 3 p.m. just following the Raucous Caucus. I want to thank again Terry D. Kester for coming on and helping to disclose some real problems in our democracy where the minority is trying to really take over from the majority in very anti-democratic ways that I think the only way they can be fought is by exposing them, and that's why I'm glad to do that. Sometimes, though, good stuff happens in our democracy, and we shouldn't always complain. It's easy to always point out the bad things that happen. But when I stood in the cold with a million of my closest friends listening to President Obama's inauguration speech, and I hope you were there, too. And if you were there, by the way, and you want to tell me what you thought, give me a call, 202-889-9797. I'd be very curious to know your thoughts on the speech, whether you agree or disagree with it. I was pleased. I was actually surprised. I know that Barack Obama has liberal values, but he's governed so far as a centrist or even appeasing the right that I guess I feared he'd forgotten them. Now, I realize these are just words. And I realize he should be judged by his actions. And don't get me wrong, obviously saying pretty words are not enough. But they're a start. If you can't express progressive values, you can never implement progressive values. Now, again, words are just words. The implementation is what counts. I accept that. But it's important in a speech that likely most of America is watching. More people watch inauguration speeches than State of the Union speeches. And so really, they're the president's biggest possible audience. Election night speeches would be another example of a really big audience. But election night, inauguration speech, State of the Union is less. That's about one of the few times a president can address the entire nation, not just Democrats, not just liberals, but moderates and conservatives. And that's why I was so proud of the president in explaining liberal values by going back to America's heritage, by using America's founding documents, like the Declaration of Independence, to justify things that, you might consider liberal, but you also might just consider American. When you talk about the Declaration of Independence, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. This idea that all are created equal is certainly a liberal value. Liberals value equal rights under the law. But it's also part of our Constitution, the 14th Amendment. It's part of the Declaration of Independence. It's part of what we think of ourselves as Americans. And so I think Obama is showing those that maybe haven't been focused on it that the word liberal is not he didn't use the word liberal, to be clear. But the values of equality and decency and helping out those who are less fortunate are indeed American values enshrined in our founding documents. They're also, by the way, religious values. And though he didn't give a religious speech, I think it's very clear that whether you're a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim, that these values of charity toward all and taking care of one another are religious values too. That's a different argument to be made. And quite probably not one made at inauguration, which is supposed to serve all Americans of any religious or no religious faith. But I want to start by playing some of Obama's speech and focusing on how he uses the Declaration of Independence to justify basic human equality and freedom. Here's the president.
We bear witness to the enduring strength of our Constitution. We affirm the promise of our democracy. We recall that what binds this nation together is not the colors of our skin or the tenets of our faith or the origins of our names. What makes us exceptional, what makes us American, is our allegiance to an idea articulated in a declaration made more than 2 centuries ago. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, we continue a never-ending journey to bridge the meaning of those words with the realities of our time. For history tells us that while these truths may be self-evident, they've never been self-executing. That while freedom is a gift from God, it must be secured by His people here on earth. The patriots of 1776 did not fight to replace the tyranny of a king with the privileges of a few or the rule of a mob. They gave to us a republic, a government of and by and for the people, entrusting each generation to keep safe our founding creed.
So you see what President Obama has done here. He is citing our most sacred documents, the things that we all know as Americans. He points out that what binds our nation together is not the colors of our skin or the tenets of our faith or the origins of our names. And if that sounds, I don't know, obvious to you, then I want you to think about every other country on earth and what binds them together. What makes me patriotic, frankly, is this uniqueness of America. The French people are bound together by their ethnicity, their faith. Most of them are Catholics. The origins of their names, they're all French. The English too, the Germans too, the Italians too, African tribes as well, Japan, China. I mean, this isn't just Mexico, although it has a mixed heritage. It's still basically Native Americans and Spanish. Every other nation on earth is bound together by their ethnicity, by their traditions, by often a common religion, often a common language, often, yes, even a common color of their skin. Most Africans are black. Most Latinos are brown. Most Asians have a certain look, and most Europeans are white. That's just a fact. And I'm not knocking the rest of the world to recognize a basic fact of the rest of the world. The rest of the world is bound together by race and color and religion and ethnicity and common traditions. And I recognize that that's the way the vast majority of humanity works. I'm not knocking it, but I do think in America we have a better way. It's funny to me that conservatives always say that they're more patriotic than liberals. I'm intensely patriotic. I'm intensely proud of my country. Yes, I recognize its problems. I talk about it all the time on the air. But I also recognize what any good liberal progressive should recognize, that America is, all right, here comes the word again. If you disagree with me, call me, better or more advanced or let's just say different, but in a good way from the rest of the world. Because we aren't defined by ethnicity. We are from all over the planet. We are black and white and Asian and Latino. We are Christian and Jewish and Muslim and Buddhist and Hindu and atheist. We are gay and straight and bisexual and transgender. We are male and female. We are young and old. We are all together here not because of our ethnicity. Or as Obama put it, the colors of our skin, the tenets of our faith, the origins of our names. Gosh knows there's more difference among American last names, I dare say, than any country on earth. What other country can you have, a Wong and a Juarez and a Jackson all sit together without any thought of the strangeness of it? But what brings us together through our diversity is this common belief in our founding documents, in the Declaration of Independence, in the Constitution of the United States, and the idea that all people, yes, Thomas Jefferson wrote men, but today we include women. Men and women are created equal and have basic freedoms, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And Obama uses these founding documents to show that while these truths may be self-evident, he says, they've never been self-executing. That while freedom is a gift from God, it must be secured by his people here on earth. That the patriots of 1776 did not believe in replacing, Obama says, the tyranny of a king with the privileges of a few, or the rule of a mob. Recognizing we have a republic, we have a representative democracy that should represent us all. Not mob rule. We should have a government, but not rule where the minority controls the majority. And then he cites, of course, the most famous speech by any president, the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln, talking about a government of, by, and for the people. So Obama is reminding us of our heritage, inciting his values. 202-889-9797. We got a caller on the line. Who we got here? Who's on the line? Welcome to the show.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Mark. Hey, I got a few quibbles. I mean, the speech was good. It was definitely better than his first inaugural.
Can you just tell me your name and where you're from real quick?
Yeah, Dan from Virginia.
Okay.
Antilles, Virginia.
All right.
Yeah, I have a problem with when I hear the left. I mean, you guys, you hear one thing. I mean, he said we because actually the message was to the left. The left spent 4 years bitching about what he did or didn't do. That's why he kept saying we. You must actively, if you believe in climate change and you want to take on, then you must take on the fossil fuels industry, not him. We must take on the fossil fuels industry. We must take on the anti-gay rights community. We must take, and that's what he was saying.
Well, you disagree with that?
I'm sorry?
You disagree with that? I mean, you don't think the president can do it alone?
That's not what the left took from it. The left took from it, and I heard you mention it, as if he was giving you his list of what he was going to do. But
I'll tell you, Dan,
he specifically was putting the onus on the left, just like he did with the guns. He did executive orders on what he could do, but he says, now, if it doesn't happen, it's not on me, it's on you.
Well, Dan, I guess I see it not quite so cynically. I see it as a partnership. I see it as I agree with the president that he can't do it alone. And I agree with you that we can't do it alone. I mean, I think we can both be right? I mean, the president can do what he can, but yes, this is We Act Radio. There is an obligation on behalf of us. You mentioned where we have to get involved. We have to help him. We have to shore him up. We have to call our members of Congress. We have to march. We have to persuade people to support his ideas. So I don't think the president can do this alone. Neither do I think he's relying entirely on us. To me, it's a partnership. We have a problem with liberal voters. And that is liberals, progressives tend to come out only every 4 years. They vote for the president. Obama won a majority, the first Democrat to win 2 majorities since Franklin Roosevelt, actually.
Right.
But you have those off-year elections. That's when Harry Reid was running in 2010. And the Republicans shellacked us. Again, that's Obama's word. That's not mine.
Right.
They shellacked him because liberals didn't vote in off-year elections. And in the state of Virginia, where I just talked about in the last hour, some real shenanigans going on. We've got off-year elections. We have elections every year in Virginia in 2009 and 2011, and one coming up this November in 2013 that virtually nobody votes in. So while I agree with you that the Senate is more conservative than the American people one of our problem is that liberal Americans, they do get out to vote every 4 years. But that's it. So I actually think there is a role for the American people, for the progressive public, beyond what the president can do, to mobilize us that we got to vote every 2 years, and in Virginia, every year. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. And let me give you something about that what you just brought up.
Okay.
Republicans are going back to the original Constitution to beat the left all the time. The left thinks just because it decrees something, then it's got to happen. And what I mean by that is that's why the left doesn't show up in the midterm elections, because they don't understand. They have a fundamental misunderstanding of how government actually works, and so they think the president does everything. And there are forces within the left that want to keep it that way because the things that they want to happen aren't necessarily according to the way our government works.
Okay.
So we just want to kick out the fossil fuel industry and just decree green energy, decree social justice or climate justice, where you're going to give $100 billion to all these countries. Just decree that, and it's just going to happen. I mean, that's ridiculous to think that you can just decree something, a utopian thing like that in our democracy, that it could just happen just because you decree that this is the truth. I mean,
I'll tell you something, Dan. I want to separate what you said a little bit, because I think you're right that there's not enough education. I think you're right that people don't understand, and I want you to help me, and you can help me by publicizing my show, or I mean because if you've been following me, if you know who I am, and you've gone to MarkLevineTalk.com, you know that I'm trying very hard to reclaim the Constitution. If you look at my demo reel, you can see that I go on Fox News and I wave my Constitution in Bill O'Reilly's face and Laura Ingram's face, and I read from it, and I show them that this is not a conservative document. It's an American document. I would actually argue it's a liberal document. It says equal protection under the laws. There's rights for the accused. There's a whole bunch of things. Congress shall pass no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. There's a whole bunch of things in there that I don't think the founders even recognize how far they go toward equality. So I'm all about reclaiming the Constitution. I'm all about telling liberals, hey, they got to vote every year, and you can help me do that. As far as climate change, though, that's a separate issue. But I'll tell you what, if you'll hang on the line, I want to get into it with you on climate change, because I think it's a more complex thing than just sort of citing the Constitution. And I also want to give others a chance to call in as well at 202-889-9797. 202-889-9797. Feel free to join in the conversation. That is what We Act Radio is all about. This is Mark Levine. This is the Inside Scoop, and we'll be right back right after this.
Local station WLS broadcasts a radio host who personally attacked a young woman just because he disagreed with her. She told elected officials about her classmates who rely on prescription birth control for their health. The host lobbed 46 personal attacks at her.
She's having so much sex, it's amazing she can still walk.
She's having so much sex, she's going broke buying contraceptives and wants us to buy them.
It makes her a slut, right? Makes her a prostitute. She wants to be paid to have sex.
Pick up the phone and tell WLS we don't talk about women like that in Chicago. They should be ashamed. You can reach WLS at 312-984-0890. That's 312-984-0890. Once again, call 312-984-0890 right now and tell WLS there's no place for this kind of indecency to women in Chicago. This community service announcement was paid for by Media Matters for America.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. This is Mark Levine, reporting live from Washington, D.C., talking about President Obama's inauguration speech, which for me was better than I expected, I got to say. I think Obama's been ruling to the center, and I was glad to hear some very strong language about equality, language about looking out for the middle class, language that's solid progressive language, but grounded in American values, grounded in the Declaration of Independence or the Gettysburg Address or the Constitution of the United States. And one thing he mentioned, which I got to say he hasn't mentioned much over the last 4 years, but he mentioned very, very clearly in his speech, was climate change. And that's not something that we've heard a lot from the president lately. This is someone who has gone and mostly talked about, other things, healthcare and so forth. Dan from Virginia is on the line, and I've got others on the line too, so we'll get to you in just a second. 202-889-9797. But Dan, you specifically raised climate change. Why did you raise that?
Well, it's almost like I don't know. I think it's like a pet issue that the left uses to bludgeon to bludgeon Democratic politicians with. Look, President Obama, you go look in that stimulus plan. Go read the book, The New Deal. I respect you greatly. That's why I know you. I picked up on you on the map. You're one of the few people I can call on the left anymore. Look, the New Deal tells you that in that stimulus bill was was the setup for the whole future infrastructure of green energy. He got the car companies to raise their CAFE standards.
Right.
But if you talk to the left, that's what I'm saying. They're so busy sharpening their weapons to bludgeon Democrats with, and it's just a knee-jerk, they won't give him any credit for that.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. So what you're saying is that President Obama did achieve some things with regard to climate change, and that the left doesn't give credit for. Let's talk about that. He did raise CAFE standards. That's the Consumer Automobile Fuel Efficiency Standards, for those that don't speak in acronyms. But basically what that is when you go and you buy a new car or a used car, it'll tell you, 20 miles in the city, 35 miles on the highway. By raising those standards up to 30, 40, 50, by requiring manufacturers to give you more miles per gallon, first of all, it saves you money, right? Because you're driving on the road and then you spend less on gas. But more importantly, for environmentalists concerned, is you buy less gasoline, you put less carbon emissions in the air, and you actually combat in a significant way global warming. It's a very good point, and you're mad at the left for not talking about this enough.
Well, yeah, because basically during that period of time when the stimulus, and remember, the media was pushing this meme from the right that the stimulus hadn't created one job. I mean, I'm in D.C. When I drive down 66, you couldn't throw a rock 20 feet. You remember when they extended the Dulles the metro all the way out to Dulles? All that was going on, and the media was pushing this meme that the stimulus didn't create one job. And the left was talking about this climate justice stuff, when he went, when the president went over to the climate conference, and he didn't really, they kind of put out this thing about $100 billion, then he kind of pulled back. Well, that's all the left has talked about with regards to climate change. It's like he hasn't done anything with it.
Well, I think part of it is that he failed in his biggest initiative, which is cap and trade. But I don't blame President Obama for that failure. Cap and trade, of course, for those who don't know, cap and trade is a conservative proposal, first proposed by the Heritage Foundation, used to be supported by John McCain as recently as in the 2008 election, and at least 20 Republican senators signed on. And basically what it says is there's two ways to combat air pollution, these carbon emissions, the things that cause global warming. One way is simply to use the Clean Air Act and ban them and say, I'm sorry, you cannot put so many particulates of carbon per million in the air. Sorry, factory, ban them. And that, you could argue, that's the liberal way of doing it. But in this case, I support the conservative measure, the one supported by Barack Obama, cap and trade. Because what cap and trade does, it says, look, if you make a very important, expensive product, you make I don't know. You make diamond cutting material. I doubt that causes pollution, but follow along with my bad hypothetical. My point is, you make something that's extremely valuable. It sells for millions and millions of dollars. If you need to pollute a little bit extra to make that very valuable product, maybe it's oil refining. That's pretty valuable because that we need it to drive cars. But you pollute in the air, you can actually trade. You can cap the total, so you can't have more than a certain amount, so we don't increase the global warming too much. But you can trade your pollution to somebody else who doesn't pollute. So basically, if you need to pollute, but it costs you a lot of money, you pay for the extra pollution you put in the air. And somebody who can make a product and pollute less to make the same product will then gain by not polluting, and the person who pollutes pays more. And this trade-off actually helps the economy. Instead of just saying you can't make that thing that pollutes a lot, by trading off these credits, cap and trade, you actually, economists will tell you, that's how you maximize both cutting down pollution and making valuable products. Right. So it's actually a solid idea.
Didn't that pass in the House? Didn't that pass in the House?
It passed in the House when Obama, when the Democrats controlled the House, yes.
Right, it passed.
It did.
But where did it die?
It died in the Senate because of the filibuster, though. I don't think you can blame the Democrats.
Who controls the rules for the filibuster?
Well, okay.
We just went through that.
Well, let's talk about that.
Reid puts the rules in. He could have changed the rules.
No, this is actually what they just fought about, Dan. The filibuster, the Senate rules, according to the Senate rules, can only be changed by a 2/3 majority of the senators. Now, there's a huge argument that's been going on for 2 centuries over whether a brand new Senate on day one could use a majority vote to change the rules, even though the rules say you need a 2/3 vote. And some argue that that's the way it is because every new Senate is a new Senate, and therefore the Constitution says each body sets its own rules, and the majority can just throw out the old rules. That's what's called the nuclear or constitutional option. The other argument, though, the one that's held for couple hundred years, is that the Senate is a continuing body, that because every single year, every 2 years, only 1/3 of the senators are up for re-election, and 2/3 of the senators continue in their 6-year terms, that the Senate never begins anew, and therefore always has to go by the rules of its past, and therefore you need a 2/3 vote. So unless Harry Reid wants to use the nuclear option, which if he uses it, Republicans, if they're a majority in the Senate, they can use it too forever. I mean, this would change American history forever. He's got to get a 2/3 vote. So
let me ask you this:
yeah,
when all these gun regulations, where if you are mentally ill and you use a gun in an incident, it can't be reported. A gun can't be, you can't sue manufacturer. All the rules went through the Senate when under Bush, and
that's true.
Why weren't Democrats filibustering that stuff?
What a great question. That's a great question. I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah.
Well, you say they're right wing. Remember, it takes 41 to do a filibuster. What happened was you had, at that time, maybe 55 or 53 Republicans, and then you had 7 Democrats, not the majority of Democrats, but a substantial minority of Democrats who joined with the Republicans to pass this legislation. There are pro-gun Democrats. You mentioned Harry Reid. Joe Manchin in West Virginia comes to mind. In Indiana, these are states that are, purple or even red states where you have conservative Democrats in rural areas that are pro-gun. I'm not denying that, Dan. Right. I don't want you to think I'm hiding the ball here. I'm not denying it, but you're absolutely right that Democrats could use the same filibuster weapon, and they did it on some things. They did it on judges, for example, but they didn't do it on guns.
Has 2/3 of the judges that are basically in the country now, doesn't he? He has got a lot of them through.
But that's because of basically every tactic that the Democrats used when they were in the minority, the Republicans have done the same tactic and worse, and 2 and 3 and 4 times. And that's why we need filibuster reform, and that's why, while I don't think we went near far enough, I'm glad we had a little bit of reform in this Senate. Let's just talk about what we did, just so you're clear here. We ended secret holds, which is good. Right. If you want to stop a nominee, you got to at least make it public. That's something. It's something. It's not as far as we should go. We stopped the double filibuster. It used to be, the last 4 years, the Republicans would filibuster the filibuster. They would actually filibuster the motion to proceed on whether or not to have a filibuster, which is ridiculous. It would just simply delay everything. That's gone. 1 filibuster per bill now. So there are some streamlined processes. I'd like to see them go further. I want to be very clear here. I want to go back to the speaking filibuster. If you care enough to stop a bill, I want to see you and your face on the floor all night long, arguing your point. But I just want to be clear here. I'm not saying that Harry Reid's not to blame or that the Democrats can't do more, but you have to understand, Dan, and I think you do, because you're pretty educated about this, that that there are things Republicans could do to muck up the works to prevent even the Democrats. I mean, universal health care is the classic example. 55 Democrats voted, and then we think we could have gotten 57 for basically Medicare for all. Universal health care, the health care that they have in Canada and France and England and Japan and all around the world where people live longer and it costs less, that had a solid majority of the Senate back in 9 and 10, but it didn't have 60 votes. And the filibuster killed it. So, I mean, you can put some blame at the feet of Democrats, but I think the lion's share of the blame does go to Republicans. Is that fair?
But here's the thing, though. During that entire time, Democrats didn't talk about things being filibustered. See that, and then here's. Let me give you a warning on what's to come on health care. And you talked about President Obama, what he spoke of in his inaugural.
Right.
He did a defense of Social Security and he did a strong defense of Medicare.
Right, we're going to play some of those clips. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the thing is, I've been listening for the whole term. You don't hear Democratic senators coming out saying, and you heard Harry Reid say it on a couple of interviews here and there, but you don't hear Democratic senators across the board defending, saying that we don't have to reform. They talk like Republicans. Every one of them says we have to do something about Medicare and Social Security. Every one of them. So there you go. It's right there in our face. So why isn't the hysteria that's directed at Obama directed at these Democratic senators that are telling you they're ready to jump? That's why Obama is going that way with this change CPI. He has to go in sync with the legislation that'll go through both houses.
But
that's how it works.
Dan, I don't think that many Democrats have called for any major changes to Social Security and Medicare. I'm sure you could find me one or two, and you could talk about the Simpson-Bowles Commission. But I think in the Senate they stood pretty firm. I don't think you're going to see anything. I mean, even change CPI, which I don't like. That's the most radical thing that's been proposed, and it's about 0.5% a year. And I'm not knocking that. I don't want to see that. But this idea that the Paul Ryan plan, which would massively cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, it doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of passing. I mean, it's not even close, not even half the Paul Ryan plan, not even a tenth of the Paul Ryan plan.
But
So
I bet you Simpson-Bowles would pass.
I don't think so. I remember it was opposed by Democrats and Republicans, and some aspects of Simpson-Bowles I like. I mean, remember, they talk about 1 for 1. They talk about raising taxes on the rich for every dollar they have in spending. But no one supported that. I'll tell you what, Dan.
Dick Durbin was on.
Well, yeah, Dick Durbin did support. Yeah. Look, I don't think they're. The other thing about Simpson-Bowles, it didn't really specify where the cuts are coming from. If you've read through the details of it, it simply says that, some cuts in Medicare. Well, Obama has shown that you can do cuts in Medicare without ever hurting the beneficiaries. You can actually do cuts in Medicare that hurt, hospitals or big health insurance companies or some doctor pay and so forth. I'm okay with certain cuts in Medicare as long as we're very clear about who we're cutting. If I'm cutting a health insurance company's profits, I am fine with it. And that saves us money, and it saves Medicare money, and no one loses out. And so just because someone says the word cuts in Medicare, don't let it fool you. And I don't think it fools you, Dan, but also to the listeners, don't think that means that Grandma won't get her Medicare. It depends who's doing the cutting. If it's Paul Ryan, yeah, Grandma won't get her Medicare. If it's Barack Obama or the Democrats, it may mean that Grandma's health insurance company makes a 15% profit instead of a 20% profit, or can't charge, $10,000 for a test that only costs them $1,000. I am fine with that. So I think there is fat to be cut in Medicare. Not again, prescription drugs, another example, could definitely be brought down if the United States government could negotiate the way the Canadian government does. We could cut our drug prices 2/3. So there's lots of fat in Medicare.
Mark? Who killed that? Who killed that? The Democrats in the Senate killed that. We had it. We had it through the House.
Well, let me tell you this. I know who put it in, because I was in Congress at the time it was put in. I worked in Congress, I think in the early part of the Bush administration. I worked for the Democrats, for Barney Frank, Judiciary Committee, Homeland Security Committee. I remember when the bill was put in that said we couldn't negotiate for better prices. It was a Republican bill. It was passed by Republicans and a few renegade Democrats. It's part of a larger bill, but 90% plus of Democrats voted against it. Now, if you're telling me that we need more party loyalty, we need more 100% votes, I agree with you. But I want to be clear that when you blame the Democrats, what you're really blaming is maybe 10% of the Democrats joining with Republicans. I just don't want people to think that the entire Senate Democrats aren't liberal, because there are a lot of liberals in the Senate, and I'd like to see more of them, to be sure. But I just don't want people to think that the Democrats. It's very hard to talk about a group of people. You say the Democrats in the Senate, you're talking about 55 extremely different men and women across the ideological spectrum, from socialist Bernie Sanders, and he is a socialist, all the way over to, well, it used to be Ben Nelson in Nebraska. He's gone now, but who is basically more Republican than Olympia Snowe of Maine. So there's a wide range there, and I just want to be fair there.
Yeah, and let me give you an example where I say the trick the left plays.
Okay.
Like the when we had the crash, we had to do some rules. It was watered down because of the Senate. It was watered down, okay, but it had something in it, right? So now we passed. President Obama did something passed.
The Dodd-Frank bill.
The Consumer Protection Agency, which was a part of it, which most Democrats in the Senate don't like.
No, I think the Democrats
they're the ones that were objecting to Elizabeth Warren heading it.
Dan, not the Democrats. No, sir. Dan, the Republicans were objecting to Elizabeth Warren. The Democrats, the vast majority of Democrats, including me, love Elizabeth Warren. I want to see Elizabeth Warren run for president in 2016. I mean, I am a huge fan of Elizabeth Warren. Most Democrats feel the same way. It was the Republicans that said that she couldn't get into office.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. So let me continue. Since you were since you've legislated before.
I did.
Okay, so you know what we got passed.
Yes. Well,
and we added the Consumer Protection Agency on top of it.
Yeah, I want to be. Just to be honest here, I was working in Congress in the Bush administration when the Republicans were in power. I've been a radio host during the whole time Obama's been in power. So I know what's going on, but I don't want to claim to have played a role in it. But go ahead, make your point.
Okay, so every time I turn on Current TV, they have every show on Current TV, left-wing show network. Every show, they have a section on why didn't Obama put the bankers in jail. Well, the reason we needed the legislation was because we knew it was completely deregulated. So how do you first you complain that he didn't push for strong enough regulation, then you turn around and now you spend every week talking about why aren't these bankers in jail? But they weren't in jail because there wasn't any laws against most of what they were doing.
You're absolutely right. Dan, you know what you're talking about. You're absolutely right. The problem with the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, the problem was not that criminals weren't prosecuted. The problem was that the horrible things they were doing to wreck the economy, the vast majority of them were legal. Credit derivative swaps and betting more than a company could pay its bets back, and the demise of AIG and Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers and all these institutions who basically put bets that they couldn't cover. All of that was perfectly legal because they worked through the regulations and around the regulators, and they made sure that they could sneak in things. I mean, credit derivative swap is the classic example. Why did they call it a swap? The reason they call it a swap is because under the law, insurance was regulated, and banks were regulated, and brokerage firms were regulated, and securities were regulated. But swap, like a swap meet, like a flea market, that wasn't regulated because people understand that if you want to swap your 12 marbles for my old nickel, Buffalo nickel, you can do that, and no one's going to regulate that, and no one cares. The idea that this word swap came to be used for some of the most sophisticated tens of trillions of dollars of financial transactions that were designed by contracts that were thousands of pages of long and fine print that nobody read. Some clever lawyer, I'm sure, made millions of dollars off of that, but they managed to work around and through the regulations. And the really scary thing about what happened in 07 and 08 was not all the criminals. The scary thing was what was legal. You're absolutely right about that.
Now, you know what? The best way to say it for the novice, our great analogy was, imagine if it was illegal for you to make a bet that an insurance company to make a bet that your house would burn down.
That's right. Or even better,
that and make money off of that.
Or even better, Dan, what if instead, right now I have insurance against my house burning down, and I have it right now, but if my house burns down, I get my insurance. What if I place 10 insurance contracts on my house so that if my house burns down, I get 10 times the value of the house? If that were to happen, that would be exactly describe what happened on Wall Street.
But
Dan,
you didn't have in the bank what to cover. You needed in the bank to cover the 10, the amount that the 10 policy would cover.
Right, Dan, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I got a couple other callers on the line. I need to give them a chance to speak as well. But thank you for calling in. I hope you'll call in again every Sunday. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
I'll let people know about you.
I appreciate that. And while we're waiting for getting the next caller on the line, I want to play very quickly what Barack Obama said about climate change.
We will respond to the threat of climate change, knowing that the failure to do so would betray our children and future generations. Some may still deny the overwhelming judgment of science, but none can avoid the devastating impact of raging fires and crippling drought and more powerful storms. The path towards sustainable energy sources will be long and sometimes difficult. But America cannot resist this transition. We must lead it. We cannot cede to other nations the technology that will power new jobs and new industries. We must claim its promise. That's how we will maintain our economic vitality and our national treasure. Our forests and waterways, our croplands and snow-capped peaks. That is how we will preserve our planet, commanded to our care by God.
I think that was one of the best defenses of acting on climate change I've heard in a long time. The president, people have argued, have been very absent, but there it was, very prime in his inaugural speech, and I thank Dan from Virginia for bringing it up. Okay, if you want to dial in, it's 202-889-9797. Let's go to one of my frequent callers here, Michael from the Bronx. How are you, sir?
Hey, Mark. How's it going?
It's going good. Going good. I had a great conversation with Dan. What do you have to add to the discussion here?
Well, I just wanted to add the part of President Obama's inaugural address when he spoke. One of the things he touched base was about gun control, and ironically, the same week where it was the anniversary of Roe v. Wade.
Right.
Not everyone knows Roe v. Wade gives the women the right to the right wing to say just to have an abortion, but it really focuses on women's right to control their own bodies.
Right, the right to choose what to do
their
with
own health care decisions,
right,
which President Obama is all for. A funny thing, Mark, about these right-wingers, we hear them constantly defending against or advocating against gun control or any kind of gun reform. They want to say more guns, more guns, more guns. And then yet, on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, they say the natural choice is life. We have to protect life. We have to protect the unborn. But yet you're going around advocating for a machine that is destructive in life, and you don't want to have any kind of reform to ensure the safety of that unborn life as well as all kinds of life.
And Michael, that's not the only example. I mean, look at health care. I mean, Republicans oppose children's health care. It's not just that they want the easy availability of guns, which kill 30,000+ Americans a year. It's the fact that even though they want to force a woman to carry a fetus to term, to take that bunch of cells that's a zygote or an embryo and let it become a fetus, and they want to protect that fetus, once the child is born, it's out of luck. Because when you're a fetus or a zygote or a couple of cells frozen in a fertility clinic, then the Republicans really care about you. But when you're a living, breathing child with needs to love and to eat and to shelter, they say, screw you, no health care, no shelter, kid, you're on your own. So they love fetuses, but they hate babies.
Mark, it gets much worse than that, and allow me to illustrate for you. The thing is that while Republicans are wasting time trivializing abortion, we have women that are actually pregnant that made the choice to go through the 9 months and welcome. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Go ahead.
All right. That made the choice to go through the 9 months of pregnancy and welcome in new life. But they are the ones that are victimized with injustice, which includes domestic violence, which includes drunk drivers, which also includes police brutality. There have been reports that stated these things, and no one is around to advocate for them. I've always stated that pro-lifers need to get their priorities straight and start protecting these women who made the willful choice instead of harassing women that want to go for abortions or whatever. The thing is that the woman's medical choice is between herself, her doctor, and God. And there are certain things, and I'm saying this as a Catholic, as a progressive, as an equal rights advocate, and especially the right to privacy, there's certain things that you just do not cross the line in. And the thing that also gets me so mad, Mark,
Charity, but
Go ahead. Yeah, no, I'm here. Go ahead.
Yeah, the thing that also gets me mad is that I've had arguments with conservatives on this issue. They said that, Michael, you being a black man, you should be concerned that abortions are on the rise, especially among black women and black babies and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, it is not. And I've seen reports that the abortion is on the decline. However, the injustices that I have mentioned that result in miscarriages, there's an identical result to abortions, but these are miscarriages due to the physical abuse. The thing is that these are the same right-wingers that want to dismiss these things that occur, and I've seen and I'm starting to see and read that there are those from the right, especially someone like, well, you know which one's news, that in the event that a pregnant woman is struck by a drunk driver or struck by a police officer's brutality or struck in domestic violence and they suffer a miscarriage, these right-wingers would deliberately falsify the statistics and say the black woman had an abortion, which is wrong.
Now,
and that is so
I
damn.
haven't heard that. You'll have to give me a
what's
source for
happening.
that. I mean, I certainly know about Republican laws to make sure that if a pregnant woman is harmed, they want to claim that 2 lives were harmed. And if the woman wants the child, then you have a right, and I'm fine with that, to sue, to say that, hey, you hit me with a car and you hurt me and you hurt the fetus. I'm fine with that. But they're using those laws to then claim that a woman can't control her body and can't have an abortion or can't have a Plan B or pill or whatever. But arguing that when a pregnant woman is harmed, that is actually an abortion, that part I haven't seen, Michael. You'll have to post it on my Facebook site.
I can tell you there were 2 incidents here in New York City in which a woman was struck. One woman was struck by a drunk driver who happened to be a New York City cop at the time. He's no longer a cop now. And another woman that was thrown to the ground. Both women were minorities. The second one was thrown to the ground for mistaken identity, and she was pregnant. Hours later, she suffered a miscarriage and lost the baby. In Kansas, I'm not really sure if it was in the state of Kansas or it was Kansas City, there was a black woman who found that there was something wrong with her baby. She was having unusual pains, and she was in the 6th or 7th month of her pregnancy. She called for paramedics. Paramedics didn't want to go out to her. She had to drive herself to the hospital, and then the cops pull her over. 2 white cops pull her over and then say she was driving erratically, and she said she's in pain, she's pregnant, she's trying to get to the hospital. The cops saying, no, you're not pregnant, you're just having a period of blah, blah, blah.
Michael, let me just stop you right here, because you're going into specifics of a case. I'll tell you what, why don't you go ahead and post them on my website at MarkLevineTalk.com or on my Facebook page, the Mark Levine fan page. But we're getting kind of far afield from where I wanted to discuss today, which is President Obama, his inaugural address, liberal values, and things like that. So
I understand.
So I'm more than happy to have you post these specific cases and for people to take a look at them. But I do have a call on the other line, and I want to move on sort of to talk mostly about President Obama's speech. All right. So thanks for your call. I'm going to move on to my other caller, but thank you for calling in. And again, you can post it on my website, MarkLevineTalk.com, or you can post it on my fan page. Many of you are my Facebook friends, Mark Levine, MarkLevine. You can post it on my fan page, the Mark Levine fan page on Facebook, or frankly, post it on my Twitter account at Mark Levine Talk. Do that. I'm gonna get to my other. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. But before I move on to my next caller, I want to play the part where President Obama is talking about women's rights, specifically because Michael brings up abortion. There's obviously much more than that, but he brings up women's rights in the same context as gay rights and civil rights, and this I think was one of the most powerful parts of his speech. So I want to play that, and then I'll get to my next caller.
An opportunity, human dignity, and justice. We, the people, declare today that the most evident of truths, that all of us are created equal, is the star that guides us still. Just as it guided our forebears through Seneca Falls and Selma and Stonewall, just as it guided all those men and women, sung and unsung, who left footprints along this great mall, to hear a preacher say that we cannot walk alone, to hear a king proclaim that our individual freedom is inextricably bound to the freedom of every soul on earth. It is now our generation's task to carry on what those pioneers began. For our journey is not complete until our wives, our mothers, and daughters can earn a living equal to their efforts. Our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law. For if we are truly created equal, then surely the love we commit to one another must be equal as well. Our journey is not complete until no citizen is forced to wait for hours to exercise the right to vote. Our journey is not complete until we find a better way to welcome the striving, hopeful immigrants who still see America as a land of opportunity, until bright young students and engineers are enlisted in our workforce rather than expelled from our country. Our journey is not complete until all our children, from the streets of Detroit to the hills of Appalachia to the quiet lanes of Newtown, know that they are cared for and cherished and always safe from harm. That is our generation's task, to make these words, these rights, these values of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness real for every American.
Wow, that was the part of the speech that just gave me goosebumps. That was my favorite part of the inaugural speech. I want to know what yours was at 202-889-9797. This is Mark Levine. This is the Inside Scoop. Just quickly, before I get to my next caller, that part, putting together Seneca Falls and Selma and Stonewall, the civil rights fights for women, for gay people, and for African Americans, all in one, and recognizing that freedom for all, equality for all, means we have to look out for one another. That we cannot just care about our own concerns, but the concerns, I'm not a woman, but I care about women's rights. Straight people have to care about gay people's rights. White people have to care about black people's rights. We all, citizens, have to care about immigrants' rights. That we're all in this together, that we are our brother's keeper. And this idea that we all have to have a chance in America. As he says, our journey is not complete until our children from the streets of Detroit to the hills of Appalachia to the quiet lanes of Newtown all know that they are cared for. This is what makes our country great, when we all stick up for each other. And again, Obama grounds it in the Declaration of Independence, in our founding values, in our Constitution, in equal protection for all. This is the part of the speech that really, to me, spoke to me the clearest. But let me go to my next caller and see what he thinks was his favorite part of the speech. This is Will Roberts, who, by the way, hosts a show on We Act Radio every Saturday afternoon. You can check him out. Hey, Will, what time is your show?
Hey, it's 6 or 7 p.m.
6, 7 p.m. on Saturdays, right here on We Act Radio. The
Yes,
Daily
sir.
Telegram, is that what it's called?
Yeah, I'm a humorist, so we just try to see if we can find anything funny about politics and society. And guess what? I just opened the paper.
But there is a lot that's funny. So was there anything funny about President Obama's inauguration speech? I mean, I thought it was kind of moving.
Well, I have to say, first of all, if you don't mind, I want to back up, and I promise you I'll talk about the inaugural. But I want to say that the last gentleman who was talking, the person speaking
about
abortion and so on, I think it's kind of funny that the I'll say Republicans, but I'm also a professional, world-known gun spinner. That's one of the things I do as a cowboy, is spin my ropes and my guns. And
you
so
spin guns? Wait, Will,
Yeah.
what do you mean you spin guns?
You ever seen like the old westerns where they spin them and pocket them, and Wild Wild West? And
I hope they're not loaded when you spin them.
Fully loaded.
That sounds really dangerous. I don't want to be around you when you're spinning guns.
But you know what, brother? That's why I'm paid good money, because I'm a professional. Don't try this at home.
Well, can't you just unload the gun and still spin it?
You can, but then if I showed you that I can shoot 6 shots in about 4 seconds without it being a semi-automatic, because it's single action, one at a time, and I have to pull the trigger back. So it's like the old West guns. It's considered the gun that won the West.
Well, dude,
the old Colt 45.
I'm glad you have skills, but if you don't mind, I think I'd rather watch them on the internet than be around you when you're practicing those skills, because one mistake and I could get a bullet through the brain.
Well, I have to tell you something, that I've been doing this for about 15 or 20 years, and I'm still here. And
I'm glad for that.
And my audience is.
I'm glad for that. I don't know that I can advocate the hobby of gun spinning, but I'm glad that you have found your liberty and pursuit of happiness. So tell me, did you call to talk about gun spinning or something else? Abortion, I guess it was.
No, I called to talk about the inaugural, but I want to say the last gentleman that called, I think it's funny that the right, the really aggressive folks on the guns, want to tell our women that this is the rights they have because you're killing children. And lo and behold, here we are now, a few hours later, and we're talking about the fact that we don't want people that are nuts or crazy to have, certain guns, not all guns, certain guns in their hands, because guess what? they kill children. So I think that's kind of ironic that they're in that sort of space. And the other thing is that, in my opinion, as a humorist, here in Las Vegas, where I live, any of a group of guys, old guys, that sit and tell a woman what they can do with their body are called pimps. Anyway, I'm just saying. But here's the deal: the inaugural, I actually loved it, but here's the reason why I loved it. Now I'm considered an independent, so that means I can flip a coin and I can go to either side of the issue. If a politician does that, they're a flip flop. But the bottom line is this: is that like you said, the State of the Union is for all of us to go, oh, that's what's going to happen. I get it. That's what's going to happen for the next blah blah years. But in an inaugural speech, what we do is we sit and listen, and it's really sort of a pep talk.
Yeah.
And what it really is, in my opinion, again, I
agree
come
with
from
you.
a simple background. And now I listened to you and Dan talk for some time, and I thought to myself, this is a little bit like listening to Mom and Dad, right, as the kids, argue, just really have it all out, and in the end they separate. They don't decide anything that made each other come together, and we sit there as kids and go, I believe Mom, I'm with Dad. The problem is this: our internet. I'm totally against the whole Dr. Google and Google, because we have no facts anymore. It's like advertising. You say it 9 times, someone blogged it. It was on the internet, and it seems to be true. Well, it's great that everybody thinks that, but Dan, I appreciate that, and he's real smart. But us folks, and what we're all trying to do on We Act, is try to educate folks that might not want to sit and know 35 years straight of political science.
Well, so there's another thing, though, too, that you pointed out about Google, that for people, because I don't think people always realize this, so I want to make sure people do. Google actually today, and I think it's a terrible thing, they don't give everybody the same searches. You may not know this. If you type in Republican and you know it well, but maybe some of our listeners don't. If you type in Republican Democrat, all right, if you're a Democrat, as I am, and my party's not perfect, but I am a Democrat, I'm going to get a lot of liberal websites and liberal points of view and Democratic Party points of view. If I'm a Rush Limbaugh supporter, and Google knows this because they watch me and they see I listen to the Rush Limbaugh show and Sean Hannity and I watch Fox News, they're going to give me, I just type in the neutral words, Republican, Democrat, they're going to give me Republican sites, conservative sites, Heritage Foundation, Koch brothers, and as a Democrat or a Republican, I'm going to believe, because it's Google, that when you type in Republican, Democrat, I'm getting neutral sources about both political parties. I'm not. Google is guessing my political point of view and trying to feed it, and in that way, it's actually worse than the Fox News MSNBC divide, because at least when you watch Fox News, you know you're watching conservative propaganda. When you watch MSNBC, certainly in the evening, you know you're getting a liberal point of view. But you may not realize, you do will, but listeners may not realize that Google, which is supposed to be neutral, is actually feeding you what they think you want to hear, and that further divides Americans. So I just want to make sure that everyone understood that. Go ahead. I think that's a good point. But again, you and I and everybody else that realizes this system of politics and media, the media circus, is it's really about selling tickets. So when you do those searches, if you really want to confuse them, Mark, tell them that you're a gun spinner and search up liberal. It freaks them out. Your computer is probably just going to go blank. It's going to collapse.
I end up,
liberal gun spinner does not compute, and then you see smoke coming out of the computer, right?
No, I get all the ads from Roswell, New Mexico, and aliens. I'm telling you.
I'm sure you do. They think you're nuts.
It confuses them. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to sell me. Anyway, they sell me dummy bullets. Anyway, but the bottom line is that
I'd sell you dummy bullets, Will. Next time you show me your trick, make sure there's dummy bullets in the gun, will you?
You know what? They're all blanks. I'm kidding you. They're never really loaded.
Thank God. Yeah, I feel much better about you now.
Well, I wanted to give you a false impression of me so that way we had somewhere to go. Anyway, listen, I just want to say that I think what the president was doing, again, what you two were doing, is really what's happening in our general consensus of people, is that we're just taking whatever the president or politicians say for word, and we're citing. The problem with our politics nowadays is really that we are now divided by our education of what we find out on Google. And I mean, someone says to me, oh, I found it on a blog. Well, first of all, blog is a 4-letter word. And it's great that your Uncle Sam decided to write a blog, but where did he get, like the gentleman who talked about abortion, he's got all these things he's stating. Is it true?
I don't
Who
know,
knows?
which is why I asked him, because I don't, look, if someone talks to me about the filibuster or gerrymandering, I know these things. I used to work in government. I've researched these things. The guy talking to me about Guantanamo Bay, I know those details. He's telling me about some case in, and I don't know whether it's true or false. So what I said to him, and Michael calls in, and he's a good guy, I said, post it on my website, post on my Facebook page, and then I could take a look at it and evaluate it, and then we could have a fair discussion on it. But you're absolutely right. People say all kinds of things. I really try hard, Will, and if you catch me doing this wrong, you call me on it. You call me on it. But I try really hard. I try really hard to back up everything I say with facts. If you've been listening to the first hour of the Raucous Caucus, when I describe the filibuster or the gerrymander, right? I'll give you a date. I'll give you a person. I talked about Thomas Nast and the whole history here, and I give you specifics. Again, check me up on it. And if I get a fact wrong, you call me in on it, and I'll correct myself on the air. But I got to tell you something. Too few journalists on the left and the right give facts to back up their opinion. Too few people, they just say, guns, whatever. I mean, I can tell you, I said more than 30,000 Americans a year die at the hand of a gun, and I got the statistics to prove it. Now, and I can even tell you that the majority of them are suicides, right? So I'm being fair here. It's only 40% or about 15,000 that are murders. It's still too high as far as I'm concerned, but I'm caring about suicides as well. My point is that people should know their facts, whether they're on the left or the right. And anytime you read, I'm agreeing with you, but anytime you read anything on any political opinion where someone just says something and doesn't back it up and doesn't give it a source, please take it with a grain of salt. Absolutely. Well,
right. and the thing is that really quickly is that I was driving down the road doing a lot of traveling because I'm a keynote speaker last week, and I got the I got the flip on the radio a lot, and I don't know why there isn't more liberal on there, just to be able to.
Oh, I know why.
Why?
Well, I mean, listen. I've been working in radio for 10 years. Which is a long time now. I started in 2003, and when I went to, it doesn't even exist anymore. Something called Democracy Radio.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
And it doesn't exist anymore. But they had a conference in the Capitol, and they had every liberal talk radio host in the country, and we all came, and there were less than 20 of us, and the entire nation. When there are hundreds, if not thousands, of conservative commentators. And the reason is it's quite simple. Conservatives support corporate profits. They support polluters. They support people who defraud people by selling them either gold or other kind of ways where, and I'm not against owning gold, but I am against owning gold when they take 10% off the top and stick it in their pocket. Companies that support all kinds of scams and all kinds of ways to defraud the consumer need to advertise. You can't defraud somebody if you don't advertise. And Republicans support massive corporate profits. They support reductions on pollution. So coal companies love, Republicans because they're for all those pollutants. And who are our liberal allies? We got a few of them. We got civil rights organizations, NAACP. We got the Sierra Club, environmental organizations. We got pro-choice groups, gay rights groups.
I gotta stop you.
But look at the money difference. Just real quick, look at the money difference between the Koch brothers, third and fourth richest people in the country who own oil companies, and the NAACP. Now that's no knock on the NAACP to say that oil companies got a lot more money than civil rights groups. So that's why conservative commentators are heard far more often on the radio than liberals.
I was actually just feeding you. I kind of knew that, but I wanted to just see what you thought of that. But here's the thing. There's a reason. And see, you mentioned one magic word, and you said .org. And the reason why, because I produced talk radio for about 10 years back in when you started.
We started at the same time then.
Yeah, right.
Were you a gunslinger 10 years ago?
I was about for the last 20 years, but mainly I was a feature reporter. So, and for Fox, go figure. Anyway,
I've been on Fox myself. Go ahead.
But here's the deal. No, it's all right. But what I wanted to say was, you say .orgs. The problem is that, and here I am being a humorist, but I want to say that Democrats know how to spend money and Republicans know how to make it. That's not a dig. But the reality is that when you say that .orgs are the ones saying this is what's happening, they're the ones on the radio, we get a lot of PSAs, and those are great. But they get a lot of people saying, I'll sell you gold, and they happen to be better Pied Pipers. And they happen to be able to get these older folks to spend their money and be able to get in their RVs and be able to go to these truck stops that I'm sitting at right now which are filled with these folks, and they'll buy those inaugural coins as long as it's not Obama. But the bottom,
which is why, Will, you and I both need more people who are listening to our shows, right, who sell products, who are liberals, who are progressives, to advertise on our shows on We Act Radio. If you're a pizza store, in Washington, D.C., or you're the Sierra Club and you want people who support environmental values, or you're the Human Rights Campaign and you want someone who supports gay rights, by advertising on We Act Radio, you can get out to a group of people who support your views. I mean, Las Vegas is actually pretty liberal, but D.C. is one of the most liberal cities in America. The District of Columbia voted more than 90% for Barack Obama and more than 90% for John Kerry. So it's not just the black president. D.C. is liberal, and Northern Virginia, 2/3 for the Democrats. Suburban Maryland, 3/4 for the Democrats. This is some of the most liberal area in America. Absolutely. And yet we still, in the District of Columbia, in Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, we've got 3 or 4 conservative radio stations, 2 liberal ones. This is D.C.'s only commercial progressive station. It's amazing. It's shocking. There's only one, and it's We Act Radio, and it's AM 1480, and you're right, we don't have enough advertisers.
Local station.
We don't have enough advertisers.
And can I just say, finally, the last thing, I'll make it short, I'll give me 10 seconds or something like that. Anyway, the bottom line is that what I think that people should be saying about the inaugural speech is that whether or not they felt moved to do something. And I hate to sound like a progressive and say, move forward. But I run around the world doing keynote speeches about people having simple sense, which really used to be common sense, but common sense ain't so common anymore. And the common sense in me says, okay, you can easily take what the president said and pull it apart and really beat it up. The right did it when I was driving home on talk radio. They found things to be able to attack. But you know what? Let's try to be a little more civilized, because it ain't 1879 with my single-shot guns. It is now 2013, and if we all want to try to get together and find the common thing, the parents arguing, we're all a family. We just have to decide how to get along. And everybody's right on certain subjects. So all I say to them is listen to that speech and stop being so accusatory, and try to find something you can take to make your lives better. Because all we really want is a job, a food on our plate, and be able to take our kids and put them in schools. You know what I mean?
I do. Well, I tell you what, before you go, I want to take a quick break. But if you'll stay on the line with me, I want to push back, or at least question, when you talk about mommy and daddy, the Republicans and Democrats, because I would argue, and you're an independent, you may disagree with me. If you do, that's fine. Hey, that's part of what radio and free speech is all about. But I would argue that this isn't a case of both Republicans and Democrats equally refusing to compromise, equally like mommy and daddy, you don't know who's right. I would argue the Democrats, particularly President Obama, have moved to the middle, have tried to compromise, and the Republicans have refused to allow that compromise. But don't answer that. I want to know if you agree or disagree with me. But don't answer yet. So you got lots of time to think about it. We're going to take a break. We'll also invite others to join in the discussion if they want to at 202-889-9797. This is Mark Levine. This is the Inside Scoop on We Act Radio, and we will be right back right after this.
Local station WLS broadcasts a radio host who personally attacked a young woman just because he disagreed with her. She told elected officials about her classmates who rely on prescription birth control for their health. The host lobbed 46 personal attacks at her.
She's having so much sex, it's amazing she can still walk. She's having so much sex, she's going broke buying contraceptives and wants us to buy them. It makes her a slut, right? Makes her a prostitute. She wants to be paid to have sex.
Pick up the phone and tell WLS we don't talk about women like that in Chicago. They should be ashamed. You can reach WLS at 312-984-0890. That's 312-984-0890. Once again, call 312-984-0890 right now and tell WLS there's no place for this kind of indecency to women in Chicago. This community service announcement was paid for by Media Matters for America.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Take Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on healthcare while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
The DC Sports Beat, Sundays from 7 to 9 on We Act Radio, 1480 AM and WeActRadio.com.
We are very proud to be the only team to have won a Super Bowl with a black quarterback. Even though there is a long history of racism in the team that is very shameful. George Preston Marshall refused to have black players on his team. He was the last team to integrate. And even though DC is changing, there's a lot of demographic shifts. This is Chocolate City. This is a black-run city, and I think it is significant that we have a black quarterback as the helm. I mean, I don't think that they are choosing him because he is a black quarterback, but he appears to be a sort of future guy to live up to, and to have that future black role model being in our nation's capital with our first black president, in Chocolate City, I think that is an excellent extra bonus to be a Washington sports fan.
The DC Sports Beat, Sundays from 7 to 9 on We Act Radio, 1480 AM and WeActRadio.com.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at WeActRadio.com.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. I've had some great discussions. I want to thank Dan from Virginia and Michael from the Bronx. I'm now talking with Will Roberts from Las Vegas, Nevada, who is also a We Act Radio talk show host. He's a gun spinner, which scares the heck out of me, but I'll try to let that go. But more importantly, he's an independent, and he was complaining about Republicans and Democrats. And I guess I got a bone to pick with you, Will, and you seem like a really nice guy, and we'll have to have a drink next time I'm gambling in Vegas. Or
I'm gambling in Washington.
Well, there is going to be gambling in Maryland, actually, in just a few months, which I support because I'm a big poker player. Here's, I guess, the beef I have. I get a lot of people who say they're independents or journalists, Washington Post, New York Times, trying to be fair, and they're like, well, the Democrats, Republicans can't come to an agreement. They need to work together. They need to do things. And I think there's a journalistic urge to be fair by blaming both parties equally. And it reminds me, I actually did a paper in college on Joe McCarthy. And it was a fascinating, obviously it's before my time, but it was a fascinating time in American history. And you'd have major newspapers like the New York Times, and they'd have one column that would say, Joe McCarthy declares Owen Lattimore is a communist. And then they'd have another column that says, Owen Lattimore denies he is a communist. And so you'd have both sides represented, but there'd be no analysis as to whether the guy was a communist or not. You know what I mean? Right, it's like Democrats say climate change exists, okay. Republicans deny climate change exists, okay. But you need to then give the third thing, which is the evidence, or lack thereof, of climate change. You need to tell us the truth in the middle. So I'm concerned because I don't see the obstruction from Democrats and Republicans equally. I see Republicans threatening to default on the national debt. I see them doing more filibusters than every Congress before them put together. Not that Democrats didn't do filibusters in the past, but Republicans have taken it to a whole new level. Not that Democrats haven't gerrymandered states, but Republicans have done it to a whole new level. So I'm not saying there's not fault on both parties, but I think it is fair and accurate and objective to say that Republicans are more of the problem than Democrats. What say you?
Well, okay. All right. What say, well, you use this, wow, phew. We might have to dock your pay for that "What Say You" thing. Okay.
And no spitting guns in my studio. All right?
Oh my God! When I get there, boy, you were my.
No, oh my God! Right. I'm hiding. I'm getting out my mace. I'll be ready for you.
Well, you can hide. You can hide all you want. I've got night vision goggles.
Oh my God!
All right, so here's the thing.
I'm getting a tank.
So first of all, in general, when you talk about the fact that when you have two different people having a discussion and one says that they are willing to try to find a compromise, just by nature, those people that are trying to find a solution and are not the people who are set in their ways, well, you tend to get people, again, who are more flexible and into compromise. So I have to say that I agree with you. However, maybe it's the word compromise, because the first word of compromise is comp, like I'm going to comp you a ticket to the show, or maybe it's...
You are from Vegas, aren't you?
Maybe the Republicans think you have to pay for that instead, so maybe we should call it patronizing. Oh, wait, that's wrong.
Well, I think you have Las Vegas values, I just got to say. When the first time you hear comp, you think of comping a ticket to a show. I just think you're in a separate world where kitsch is good somehow. I don't know. You're in a separate world by yourself.
You know what? You lost your comp ticket when you come to Vegas, brother. Anyway,
aww.
One of the Cirque du Soleil shows I was in. So here's the deal. The bottom line is that I don't believe that you're wrong in your assessment, but we go back to that same conversation that if you go into your doctor and say, look, I got this lump on my head for the last 3 weeks, I think I have cancer, he or she will say, oh, you've been on Dr. Google. The problem is this. The problem is that you are saying that you think you're right, and they're actually right. You're actually correct. They are saying that they are right. And the problem we have in our country is that everybody is basing their facts upon something that is really not technically factual. It's that Google thing that you said where they search.
Right. But
so how is it? That's always going to be that way, brother.
Well, no. First of all, no. First of all, it's not always going to be that way. There was a time when I was a little kid when Walter Cronkite would come on television and he'd say that's the way it is, and liberals and conservatives respected Uncle Walter. I mean, there was a time when we knew there was an objective news source. I think CNN strives, often fails, but strives to be that objective news source, and at least they're trying to be.
Maybe you should call your show "There Used to Be a Time," because the bottom line
that time's gone, is what you're saying.
With Mark Levine, there used to be a time when the wheel was square. That's cool. But you know what? I'm the most optimistic person in the world, I think, and I'm telling you that the bottom line is that I want to believe that people, I don't care what you are, have faith. I believe, and it doesn't have to be God or whatever. When people say, do you believe in God? I go, put another O. I believe in good.
There you go.
I believe that. But the bottom line is that, Mark, is that you know as well as I do, is that we can't push the facts when we're trying to decide anything anymore because the facts keep changing.
Well, no. I see now. Facts, opinions can change. Ways to present facts can change. Ways you want to look at facts, you can argue about those. But no, facts are stubborn things, as some great person I can't recall once said. I know it's Pat Moynihan who said that you have the right to your own opinion, you don't have your right to your own facts. If we can't agree that 2 + 2 = 4, if we cannot agree that when you lower revenues coming in the government and raise government spending, that increases the deficit, and that when you raise taxes and lower spending, that decreases the deficit. I mean, math, as Obama put it. There are certain stubborn facts out there. And not all of them favor the Democrats. You may have heard Dan from Virginia was complaining about the Senate and Guantanamo Bay, and I agree with him. So I'm not trying to hide the ball from my side at all. At all. But I really don't like this idea that facts are somehow malleable, that you have the right to your own facts. You don't. You only have the right to your own opinion.
You're absolutely right, but the problem again is that when you look at an article nowadays, a lot of times, do you remember back in the old days where you could actually see at the bottom it says, "Here's my sources"?
Right.
The problem is that yes, your facts are your facts, and you know what? Black and white is black and white. But just to quote the words of my father, "Hey, Dad, that's a white wall." He'd say it's off-white. And I'd say, no, it says white here. He goes, well, they're wrong. I was Mensa, which means he thinks he's smart. But the fact is that it is what I think the conversation, again, I'm trying to lead to the point here, is that you're right, facts don't change, but the way that we approach people to be able to let them know that they may not be quite spot on is what we need to do.
Oh, no, that's fair. No, listen, there are absolutely ways to approach facts and ways to approach people and to marshal facts and to do so with an open mind and a flexible conversation, and that's why I say on the air, if you think I'm wrong, call me out. I ain't afraid of you. I want you to, because I want to correct the record, and if I've said something wrong in any of my broadcasts, you call me out, I'll check the facts first. I won't just take your word for it, but it has happened. I've been on radio 10 years, and it has certainly happened that someone has called in and said, Mark, you know what? I heard you say this, but you were wrong. It's actually this, and here's my source, and I say, I check it out, and I'm saying, you know what? That guy was absolutely right. I apologize. I retract my statement because, again, opinions are one thing, facts are the other. So I'm a firm believer in facts. I believe there's an objective truth out there. I'm not a relativist. I'm not, does this table really exist? It's really just a bunch. I mean, I know it's a bunch of atoms, but it seems hard to me, and I can hit my fist on it. It matters that we get our facts right. And I would ask anyone who looks on the internet to look up their sources. If you look at Wikipedia, let me tell you, I've edited Wikipedia. And, if you go to Wikipedia, check their sources, and then check those sources, and make sure they're right and they're accurate. And don't believe everything you see or read. It's that simple. Don't believe everything I say either. Check me out. And if you find that over time I seem to be right about all my facts, then, hey, keep listening, because I think I'm right. And listen. And then if you find Rush Limbaugh tends to be wrong about all his facts, then, you know what? Maybe laugh at him, but don't pretend that he says anything of any real value.
Right, but what your statement was is you just basically put the biggest news source that makes the biggest money out of business, called tabloid magazines. And unfortunately, that's the fact on that. Listen, I agree with you, and I know your show, and I've listened to it quite a lot, and I know that you try to get both sides. I have a segment on my show called Hug a Conservative, because I want. They
don't like to be hugged, Will. You try to hug them, they get all grossed out, and they try to get out of your hug, and it's a very dangerous thing. And they might pull out a gun and shoot you, so it's very dangerous to try to hug a conservative. I just have to be really careful about that.
But I hug a gun, and when they feel that, they like it. But I'll tell you this: you have to do prom dance hug, which is pat them on the back, and then I show them my gun, and I can talk to any right winger I want because I got a gun.
I'll tell you something really funny, Will, and then I got to move on. But
I know, move on.
My name is Mark Levine, Levine. There is a right-wing, frankly crazy in my book, really out there, right-wing, horrible talk show host by the name of Mark Levine, MarkLevine. Levine, of course, it's me. E stands for, I don't know, whatever you want. Excellent radio host. No, whatever. But the point is that lots of people confuse me and him because our names are similar, even though we don't look alike, talk alike, and God knows we don't think alike. We're very, very different people, and I think actually some of the things he says are offensive and atrocious. But because people confuse us, I can't tell you how many emails I get that say to me, "Oh, great one," which he is talk about narcissism. Wow. He actually calls himself Great One, which to me is just shocking in its ridiculous immodesty. But so they write, "Oh, Great One," to me. What is your view on immigration? And then I'll respond, well, I think we need a path to... this is a true email I got a few months back. Funny. I believe we need a path to citizenship. I think that the people coming to this country without documents are here for the same reasons that my great-grandparents came to this country, to seek the American dream, to get a better life. I think we should give them a chance. They broke the law, so I think they should pay a fine. But I think that they and their children should have a right to stay in America and have a chance to come here. And then the guys write back to me, and they say, wow... I didn't say I'm Mark Levine, not Mark Levine, so maybe I'm committing a fraud here. But hey, they wrote me. They asked me a question, and I answered their question. I didn't lie to them. They asked me my views. I told them my views. If they want to call me Great One, I appreciate it. Even if I think that they're talking to the wrong guy, I'll take it. So I respond to this guy, and he writes me back, wow, I'm surprised that's their view. But the way you express it actually makes a lot of sense to me, and I agree with you. So because they thought I was a right-winger, they were willing to listen to a very progressive view on immigration and agree with it because they thought that I was on their ideological side. And I think that's probably the same thing when they see you have a gun. They're like, wow, I can talk to you. You're reasonable. Oh, yeah. But what that tells you is that their prejudice, and prejudice, of course, comes from prejudging. That's what the word means. That's what prejudice is, when you prejudge something. They are prejudging, and they're saying, I'm looking at the source, not at the facts or the logic of the argument, but if I believe the source believes what I believe, I'll just accept it at face value. And I say to progressives, I'm a progressive, you are, don't necessarily take what Mark Levine says at face value either. Listen to my logic, listen to my facts, check my facts. If you don't follow my logic or you disagree with me, call in. Let's discuss it. 202-889-9797. Let's talk about it on the air and let me know why, because you shouldn't just take my word for it, just like that conservatives shouldn't take Mark Levine's word for it. But it just shows, frankly, how people tend to be blind sheep. They just follow whatever someone they think they like says. And I think that's a dangerous thing.
And I'll tell you what, I think the solution might be, and I have a plan, and it's a 4-letter word, so here it is. And that basically would be that we should put all politicians in confession booths. So that way people can't see them, and then when they say what they're going to say, we won't know what they look like. Because I have the feeling that you're right, because when I go into my audiences are mostly right-wing, although I did 4 years here for Cirque du Soleil on the Strip with 2,000 people a night, 2 shows a day. The bottom line is that when
Don't
they
tell me
that, they have their...
You spun guns for Cirque du Soleil.
I spent the last 4 years in a show called Viva Elvis. I was the top act in one of their shows for the last 3 years, doing about 1,400 shows. That's what I did.
What did you do? Spin guns? Did you spin guns?
And rope. I'm a professional. If you looked up Will Roberts and roping, or my show, WillRobertsWeeklyTelegram.com, you'll see that I basically have traveled the world around in the last 15 or 20 years, emulating the life of Will Rogers. I'm a syndicated humorist column, and also my show is on a handful of markets around the world, and that's what I do. I've literally changed and made it myself into a modern-day Will Rogers.
Well, I'll tell you something. And first of all, you sound like a terrific guy, and I'm really glad to have you here on We Act Radio. Let's close this segment then with my favorite quote by Will Rogers ever. My favorite quote by Will Rogers is when he said, "I am not a member of any organized party. I'm a Democrat."
That's right.
I love that quote. Thank you for your call, Will. I really enjoyed this segment. Thank you so much for calling.
Brother. I'll try to, tell everybody about your show, because you're a real stand-up guy.
Please do.
I don't know how tall you are, but you're a real stand-up guy.
Hey, well, come join my fan page, all right? Go to the Mark Levine fan page. Befriend me on, by the way, this is not just for Will. Everybody, come to Facebook. Be my friend. You can find out when I'm doing my shows, when I'm on TV. You can find out when I'm on We Act Radio, and I do several other radio shows. Friend me on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at MarkLevineTalk. Go to my website, MarkLevineTalk.com. And Will, if you friend me, then I can find you and follow all your stuff. And heck, I may even go to a gun spinning show. That still scares the heck out of me, but I'll watch you do the ropes instead. I think that's better for me. Thanks for your call, Will. I really do appreciate it.
All right, brother. Talk to you soon. Good luck on you.
Thanks. When we come back, I want to play another really important part of Obama's inauguration speech, the part where he defended Social Security and Medicare and progressive values that help the middle class. If you want to call in, there's still some time to do so before we close up shop at 3 p.m. 202-889-9797. This is Mark Levine. This is the Inside Scoop. We'll be right back right after this.
Take Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on health care while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
The DC Sports Beat, Sundays from 7 to 9 on We Act Radio, 1480 AM and WeActRadio.com.
We are very proud to be the only team to have won a Super Bowl with a black quarterback. Even though there is a long history of racism in the team that is very shameful. George Preston Marshall refused to have black players on his team. He was the last team to integrate. And even though DC is changing, there's a lot of demographic shifts. This is Chocolate City. This is a black-run city, and I think it is significant that we have a black quarterback as the helm. I mean, I don't think that they are choosing him because he is a black quarterback, but he appears to be a sort of future guy to live up to, and to have that future black role model being in our nation's capital with our first black president, you know, in Chocolate City, I think that is an excellent extra bonus to be a Washington sports fan.
The DC Sports Beat, Sundays from 7 to 9 on We Act Radio, 1480 AM and weactradio.com.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
On Washington every Sunday, attorney, and I know what really goes on in this city. So please check me out Sunday from noon to 3 p.m. And now back to David Schuster. Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. This is Mark Levine. We've only got about, 15 minutes left or so if you want to call in at 202-889-9797. I want to thank all my callers today. We've had a lot of great discussions. I want to close, though, by playing a little less part of Barack Obama's inaugural address, the part where he talks about the middle class, Medicare, Social Security, basic liberal programs that have sustained the American middle class, dating all the way back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and making the case, which, I don't know that you should even have to make. These are very popular programs, Social Security and Medicare, but to this day, every day, Republicans are still trying to cut these programs. So I want to play this part of President Obama's speech and comment on it.
For we, the people, understand that our country cannot succeed when a shrinking few do very well and a growing many barely make it. We believe that America's prosperity must rest upon the broad shoulders of a rising middle class. We know that America thrives when every person can find independence and pride in their work. When the wages of honest labor liberate families from the brink of hardship. We are true to our creed when a little girl born into the bleakest poverty knows that she has the same chance to succeed as anybody else because she is an American, she is free, and she is equal not just in the eyes of God but also in our own.
Now that is really important. Before we get to Social Security and Medicare, just the basic liberal value of equal opportunity for all. That's the American dream. That is why our ancestors came to this country if they weren't on slave ships, or the few of us that are Native Americans. Vast majority of Americans came to this country seeking a better life, thinking that anyone from the poorest immigrant could come in and make it. And Obama says that we can't succeed when a shrinking few do very well and a growing many barely make it. He's right about the economy. He's right that the reason we have the strongest economy on earth is because we have the strongest middle class on earth, and the middle class is getting squeezed. He talks about the wages of honest labor, liberating families from the brink of hardship. My dad did not grow up with much money, but he was able to work construction jobs in the summer and go to college at a state university. That's much harder to do today. Honest labor liberates families from the brink of hardship. And he goes on to say that we are true to our creed when a little girl born into the bleakest poverty knows that she has the same chance to succeed as everybody else because she's an American, she is free, and she is equal, not just in the eyes of God, but in our own. Think about what that means. Think about how often in this country people are told, oh, I'm sorry, you can't do that. You don't have the money to do that. I'm sorry, you can't afford a decent attorney to defend you, even though you're innocent of the crime. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't afford to go to this university, even though you're smart enough to get in. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't afford the health care you need to treat your 5-year-old who's got leukemia. You're just not rich enough to afford the doctor. See, I don't think health care or education or legal representation should depend on the size of your wallet. These are basic American values. They're basic human rights. And we liberals believe, but I think we Americans believe that honest labor should be able to liberate us from poverty. And then Obama goes on to describe how we do it. What we have to do to give everybody an equal chance to succeed.
We understand that outworn programs are inadequate to the needs of our time. So we must harness new ideas and technology to remake our government, revamp our tax code, reform our schools, and empower our citizens with the skills they need to work harder, learn more, reach higher. But while the means will change, our purpose endures. A nation that rewards the effort and determination of every single American. That is what this moment requires. That is what will give real meaning to our creed.
A nation that rewards the effort and determination of every single American. We at heart believe in a meritocracy. We're not socialists. Some of you may be. But we don't believe that everyone should get the same thing no matter how hard they work. We believe in hard work. We believe you should be rewarded according to hard work. But everyone that works hard should be rewarded. It doesn't matter whether you're a janitor or a truck driver or a sanitation engineer, sometimes known as garbage men, or whether you're a baron of Wall Street. Every American that works hard should have a chance to succeed, a basic minimum standard of living. And how do we do it? Well, Obama reminds us of the programs that have kept us around and given us such a strong middle class and strong economy for the last 80 years or so.
We, the people, still believe that every citizen deserves a basic measure of security and dignity. We must make the hard choices to reduce the cost of health care and the size of our deficit. But we reject the belief that America must choose between caring for the generation that built this country and investing in the generation that will build its future. For we remember the lessons of our past, when twilight years were spent in poverty and parents of a child with a disability had nowhere to turn. We do not believe that in this country freedom is reserved for the lucky or happiness for the few. We recognize that no matter how responsibly we live our lives, any one of us, at any time, may face a job loss or a sudden illness or a home swept away in a terrible storm. The commitments we make to each other through Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, these things do not sap our initiative, they strengthen us. They do not make us a nation of takers, they free us to take the risks that make this country great.
So that's it. That's the heart of the argument right there. That is the stirring defense of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, and really the idea that we are our brother's keepers, that we all look out for each other. That's the heart of it right there. Obama says that we have an obligation one to another. And not just one to another from those of us that are here, but the generations that exist have an obligation to the generations of the past, those that help us get here, an obligation to the generations of the future. You know, one of the best ways I know to describe this is a little African sculpture that I have in my home that I got, where was the man from? They may have been from Kenya. Anyway, this was an African sculpture. It's a wonderful thing. I should bring it in and show it on the video. In fact, I'll bring it in one day. It has at its bottom some of the elderly, a group of elderly people, men and women, and on their shoulders stands middle-aged adults, our parents, and on their shoulders stands the children, and the children hold a rock, an uneven load. They hold the future. Now, if you are a rugged individualist, if you're a supporter of Ayn Rand, if you're a supporter of Paul Ryan, if you're a supporter of the ethic, the ethos of selfishness, what Ayn Rand called the virtue of selfishness in Atlas Shrugged, then you believe you truly are on your own. Screw the rest of humanity. You could do it all yourself. And there are people who say that. I'm American. I can do everything myself. I don't need help from the government. I don't need help from you. I don't need help from anybody. And because I don't need help from anybody, I don't need to help anybody. You leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. And we'll go about our own way. That's the essence of the libertarian view. And I would argue today's conservative view. But if you think about it, you've never been on your own. From the day you were born, you could not survive without other human beings taking care of you. No infant on this planet Earth has ever survived more than a few weeks without some kind of human kindness. Someone's got to feed and clothe and shelter that infant, and give that infant basic health care, and teach that infant a language, and give that infant a chance to succeed in life. And yes, it's often mothers and fathers, but sometimes it's grandparents and uncles and aunts, and sometimes it's not even relatives. It's adopted parents and foster parents, and it's also schools and teachers, and, well, it's a village, as Hillary Clinton once said. It takes a village to raise a child. All you rugged individualists who think that you are here by virtue of your strength and your skills and your smarts, you know what? You're not. You're here because somebody took care of you when you were an infant and a child. You're here because you could go to schools by driving on roads built by the government. You're here because you have health care. And because, well, if you're poor, President Obama is going to make sure you have health care. You, like that African statue, you stand on the shoulders of those that came before you. And if you don't believe that other people brought you to where you are today, then I'm sorry, you're wrong and you're an idiot. All of us stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us. And that's why it is wrong for us not to let the future generation stand on our shoulders, not to help the future children, not to help students get student loans, not to give children health care, not to feed and clothe the next infants of the next generation. Obama says in his inaugural, we reject the belief that America must choose between caring for the generation that built this country and investing in the generation that will build its future. We are the links between the generations. And just like you're able-bodied now, hopefully, and able to help others, so able-bodied people help you and will help you in the future. Because on your deathbed, you're likely to be just about as helpless as you were as an infant. Remember, Obama reminds us, freedom is not reserved for the lucky. No matter how responsibly we live our lives, any one of us at any time may face a job loss or a sudden illness or a home swept away in a terrible storm. You can't control the weather. You can't control fate or health care or cancer. You can control health care, but you can't control your health. Any of us could come down with cancer at any time. Any of us could have a storm sweep away our home at any time. Any of us could be disabled at any time. And these social programs help maintain us. We put it all in the insurance system knowing that if we get disabled, it will be there. If we get unemployed, it will be there. If we are too old to pay for ourselves. We will have something to take care of us in our old age if we live too long. Or if, like Paul Ryan, our parents die young, Social Security takes care of minor children. These things, Obama says, do not sap our initiative. They strengthen us. They do not make us a nation of takers. They make us free to take the risks that make this country great. And like that African sculpture, the generations support each other, and history goes on. That is the heart of the liberal argument. It's the one that President Obama made so well at his inauguration. This is Mark Levine. This is the Inside Scoop. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you want to know more about it, go to MarkLevineTalk.com. Follow me on my website. Follow me on Twitter at MarkLevineTalk. Go to my Facebook fan page, the Mark Levine fan page. Let me know you heard this, and whether you agree or disagree, I want to hear from you. That's it for the Inside Scoop. We'll see you next week with the Raucous Caucus at noon on Sunday, and then the Inside Scoop at 1 o'clock. See you next Sunday. Thank you so much.
You're listening to